Avinu Malkeinu.
I mean, I'm a historian and a philosopher, and I'm an academic, but you can't just live buried in books and working simply on pure theory. I also think academics have a moral duty to be involved in peacemaking, in conflict prevention, and in healing. The point of being an academic, the point of being a philosopher is to help heal these conflicts. There are millions of people around the Middle East in suffering, in pain, in hunger, in insecure status. There are refugees because of the conflicts in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and the ongoing problems between Israel and Palestine. If I, as a philosopher, can do something to help, I will. So the idea of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East is just to create a forum, a context in which people from all sides of the disputes can come together, discuss. At the moment, maybe they can't meet in the same room in a conference-type venue. Maybe this is where the media comes in. We can take the camera to them. We can hear their stories. And it's tragedy on both sides, isn't it? The history of the Jewish people, going back to their own experiences in World War II, concentration camps and so on. Many of the current population of Israel had relatives who died there or themselves survived it. But the Palestinian narrative is deeply disturbing and tragic as well, and we need to hear that. And I think the world needs to hear both sides. So it's a project focused initially on Israel-Palestine, but with the wider Middle East on the agenda.
This world was created by some super intelligence. You can call it God, you can call it the divine, you can call it something else. And today scientists and mysticism, they are finding the links. So one day science and mysticism will unite, and they will have for us the proofs, I would say, that we ought, because you say, where is God? So we'll have some kind of another explanation that maybe we are not aware of it now. But in any case, if we accept that there is a divine will beyond us, this divine will guide me and guide you, and our human wills will have to surrender to this divine will and to this divine superpower, I would say. And this is also when the Messiah would come as well.
What would you say in response to that? Would you agree with that as another dimension to the peace process? It's not just about political power, it's about spirituality and a reorientation of human psychology in some way.
You know, spiritual thoughtful is nice to deal with it, and nice to think about, and nice to perhaps to see as another solution for the problems of this life. But when I say that between people they have to be the same level, the same rights, the same life, to be all the people in the world the same. And
I agree with that.
And when you say that God promised us as Jewish this land, that means God gave priority to a people instead of others. I cannot see this.
You cannot accept it.
I cannot see this God that give equality and shivayon between all the people,
yeah.
Equality between all the
but
people.
He's not here to defend himself, isn't he?
But
I can't.
if isn't here,
that is not a very good reason
no,
that neither you know I'm aware about it.
If he is not here to defend himself, we cannot speak instead of him. Let him say that.
Well, that's what he said.
Well, prove me.
Well, we'll have to bring the Bible.
The Bible is not a proof for me.
Well, I'm sure the Quran as well you find.
Also not. And also the New Testament.
These are ancient.
Everyone will say that the
So,
Bible is
you
the
know
right,
what?
the Quran is the right, and the New Testament is the
So
right.
I
They're all relatively recent.
So
to-
you will have to come.
I say, if there is such a God that give one person better than the other, he is a gizan.
What does that mean?
From races. He's a
It's a
racist.
racist, yeah. So maybe just to sort of think about what we're saying philosophically, it's not so much that the God of those peoples did make selective preference, but rather that the people felt themselves to be specially called. And it's an emotional thing, it's an emotional bond. If you've suffered as a people, and if you look at the history of the Jewish people, even when they were wandering patriarchs with Abraham, a few tenths, they were always getting into trouble. They were always, poor old Abraham didn't really have a home. He was always on the move. He got into trouble in Egypt. He always falling into trouble, his descendants the same. There's a lot of insecurity
But
in the history of these people.
Abraham wasn't a Jewish person.
Well, he's
You know
regarded
that
by the Jews as the founder of the
Judaism began so far from Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph.
What do you mean? You see them
Today in the radio, I heard a professor that's speaking about this kind of philosophy.
Right.
That the Judaism became from Yehuda and Maccabim. It's been
The
far
Maccabees,
from,
much later.
far from Abraham. Abraham was a person and not a Jewish person and not a Muslim and not a Christian.
I think it was 1942 that they were taken to the concentration camp, the whole Jewish community. 60,000 people who lived in Thessaloniki were taken by trains to what was called at the time the New World, and that was of course Auschwitz in Poland. And after a few hours, most of the community was killed, confiscated, you call it, at the gas chambers. And she was 14 years old, so they spared her life, because she was able to work, and she managed to survive because she had a lot of imagination. She was young, she wanted to live, and she used her imagination to imagine that she's being somewhere else. It gave her a lot of strength and some luck as well, and she managed to get out, but the rest of the family and the community were killed there.
So she was one of the few survivors.
She was one of the few,
Thessaloniki's
yes.
Jewish.
Yeah, one of the few survivors. And after the war, the Second World War was ended, she came to Israel as an illegal immigrant.
Right.
Because at the time, it was before Israel was, the state of Israel was established, and it was, of course, the British mandate on Israel. And I think in my story, I represent the story of the new Jewish or Israel state, because I have no relatives, basically. I don't know many people. I don't have any aunts or uncles or... And I'm only...
They'd all been killed, basically.
Yeah, they've all been killed by India, no cousins, nothing. And basically, my mother, she had to start new life here.
I am the victim of the victims of the Holocaust. I am the indirect victims of the Holocaust. Auschwitz is terrible, I cannot deny it and cannot minimize it, but I am not the reason for Auschwitz. I am the recipient of what happened and the tragedy for our cousins happened by the Nazis. And this is very important. For me, it's not a double tragedy. It is a tragedy created as a result of unsolved tragedy where I have no hand in creating that conflict. This is we should know. And I couldn't really put the suffering of Palestinians on equal footing with the suffering of the Israelis. I'm talking about a Palestinian who received all of these blows as a result that the Jews, and rightly, they have the right to have a safe haven. I'm not going to say here or there, because I'm not God, and I don't believe in tribal God. I believe they have it. Since they are here, I'm omitting many years of discussion and Byzantine discussion, which is here infringing on Byzantine group, talking about, we are talking about two-state solution now. And up till this moment, the tragedy continues for us, and the Israeli government plays to be victim despite they are the perpetrator. They try to enhance the guilt feeling in the West. It's not my business and not my problem, but I wouldn't like others to solve their conflict on the expense of my children, and at the expense of our peace, and the expense of others.
The fear was then realised, the risk they took in declaring the state of Israel was that they would be attacked by the surrounding Arab nations. And then that actually happened, didn't it?
Exactly, oh, definitely.
And there was a war.
Yeah.
The root of a lot of the current problems, obviously the Palestinians' separate narrative of the refugee status was basically because they lost that war, wasn't it?
Yes, of course, because they could have accepted to have their own state at the time. The United Nations declaration was that we were going to have two states, the Israel state and the Palestine state.
And that was a two-state solution already on the table.
Two-state solution.
In 47.
Yes, in 47, yes.
And did Ben Gurion agree with that?
Ben Gurion agreed with that, yes. It was better than nothing, you know.
Right.
It was, he agreed with that, yes.
So what he wanted, he was the kind of prime minister in waiting, as it were.
Yes,
He
yes.
wanted a separate Israel state.
He agreed to
And
this
the second
solution,
one.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and the Arabs couldn't accept it. They said, what is Israel? We finished it with 1 week, and
So
we
they
sold them
wanted-
to the sea.
Right, so they wanted no Israel at all.
No Israel at all.
Yeah. But then Israel went ahead and declared independence in its part of it.
In its part, and won the war,
Right, and by...
and enlarged her part, if you
Right.
like to put it like that.
Right.
But in Jerusalem, they lost, so that's why the city was divided into two cities.
In many countries, the missionary came first, then the politicians came. This is true in Palestine. The missions came first, the different European, basically Catholic, who took quite a bit of the national, what they call the Greek Catholic Melkite community, or the Orthodox. They call them the Greek Orthodox now. Then came the Protestant missions, be they the Presbyterians, Protestant in the tradition, I mean, or the Anglicans. But then came the British. They came with their part. 1917, First World War. But long before the war began, they established themselves in the form of an embassy or a consulate in Palestine. And though the consul general had to report to the bishop, not the bishop to the consul general, gradually the politicians took over. And when Britain came, in 1923, in my opinion, came the first British mistake vis-à-vis the situation in Palestine, the Balfour Declaration, which gave the land to a people that composed only a little fraction of the community in Palestine. Perhaps there were 56,000 people, maybe 56,000 Jewish people in the whole country. And then Balfour came, accepting what was at once preached by some Anglican priests, that Palestine was a land without people. Why not give it to a people without a land? They forgot that the Palestinians were there long before Joshua came to Jericho in pre-Christian era. And then the Jewish immigration came, supported by Western powers, by Western churches, believing that the rise of Israel will hasten the second coming of Jesus Christ. And this is now greatly supported by and believed by the evangelicals in different parts of the world, not least in the United States of America, and here also in England. They see in the rise of Israel a fulfillment of the prophecy of Ezekiel, the dry bones, and the coming back of the Jews to Israel. It's unfortunate that this religious understanding of the land, the covenant, the promise, brought about one, if not the most complicated problems in modern history.
As a historian, I think conflicts present incredible difficulties for historians because both sides are partly right. To tell the history of the conflicts in the Middle East up to the present time is almost an impossible task because each person's micro-narrative of experiences is their truth, is their history. To tell the proper story, we would have to literally interview every one of the millions of people in the Middle East and hear their own personal stories. We'd somehow interweave them as a narrative. Now that cannot be done. So what you have to do is try and get an overview, see what are the general stories emerging. And there are so many parts still not told from the whole Middle East problem, going right back to World War I, in fact. For instance, we interviewed in Bethlehem an Armenian who's living in Palestine, who identifies strongly with the Palestinian cause. The history of the Armenian peoples and their suffering during World War I is something that is part of the bigger picture of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East. Truth doesn't have a sell-by date.
Too much politics and too little care for the polis, for the city. And so we said we don't want to engage really in politics up there, we want to care for the city and create an infrastructure, create job opportunities, give a vision, empowerment to people, and this is our contribution to peace.
How do you find the longer term prospects for Palestine and Israel coexisting side by side in peace? Are you optimistic about a two-state solution emerging with some autonomy for Palestine?
No, actually I'm not optimistic at all. I think we are heading towards a system that I call war, W-A-R. I think Israel is importing the system of walls from Germany, that's the W.
Yeah.
And the system of apartheid, that's the A from South Africa. And the system of Indian reservations from the US. And trying to implement the three of them here in Palestine. And so I think this is what we are heading towards.
And also the Israelis are perpetuating violence. Peace activists like us apply for a permit to go to Jerusalem and have a cross. They don't want you to show the world your non-violent action. Non-violent action against the war. Last time they killed a 12-year-old boy. What does it mean?
When did this happen?
This happened just last week in Nahrin village.
After he was handcuffed.
And another one was shot by a rubber bullet after arresting him. And long story, B'Tselem has the videotape and everything.
So they were protesting against the war in a non-violent way?
Peaceful way. They have also international observers, participants, also peace activists from the Israeli camp.
Right. And yet still somebody was killed?
A 12-year-old boy who was just
with live
ammunition in the forehead.
He was shot in the head.
And then 2 days later, a 17-year-old boy was shot twice at close range. Here in Palestine, actually, we are under occupation, so any help it's very useful for us. So I think this things that I can give to my people, it's helpful for my people, for my country, and the same time that maybe because we are under occupation and we were kicked from our country, so that's make our connection to the country stronger than anybody else.
In Bethlehem area, there are 3 camps: Aida, Bet Jibrin, and Dehesha. The biggest one is Dehesha. 12,000. Aida, they are 4,000. And the Azza camp, or Bet Jibrin camp, 2,050 person.
And altogether in the West Bank, how many refugee camps are there?
I don't know exactly, but I can explain that the Palestinian population everywhere in the world, there are 10 million. 7 million of them, they are refugees. 7 million refugees. And you can find 3 refugees in the world, 1 Palestinian. Now we contacted the soldiers each night. They came to the camp to attack the camp, just to move with the jeeps and the people.
In the camp or around it?
Inside the camp and in the main street. Every day they came and arrest people. Still last night, all the foreign people, they hear the voice and they're looking through the window. They saw a lot of lights and shouting, and they asked me in the morning, what's up? I said, no, the Israeli jeep just arrived, and the people, they go to attack them or to throw stones and etc.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's conflict every day, really?
It's conflict each moment, not every day. Each moment we have a conflict. Now you can hear now when some problem in Bethlehem, some problem in Bet Jala, in Bethlehem, I mean, and the other areas. We can build a state in the Asia camp with half kilometer square with 12,000 people. We don't have even the land. You can look for that. Now from the window you can see the big colony, just they occupied all the free land, I mean the field. Yeah. They occupied all the mountain and we are stuck in the building, and in the media they explaining that the Palestinians, they don't want peace.
That international society, that they should open their eyes, because we have a planned international committee now. Yeah. No one looking for the Palestinian, no one looking for their rights. And that's making us like
forgotten people.
Yes, forgotten people.
Yeah.
I'm actually a summer intern with the clinic, one of 2 interns for the summer. Who's basically specifically working on a project regarding Palestinian refugees leaving Iraq. But the clinic in general is definitely, it's one of the first Palestinian law clinics in Palestine that's working to give a more hands-on practical legal education to the students. Because the legal education here is a mix of different types of law, from the British Mandate and Jordanian law, Israeli law, to kind of get a better idea of how human rights works in this area. So the clinic works on taking the students for practical experience in the field and with different organizations, to give them a more well-rounded legal education.
Right. Tell me a bit about some of the institutions you work with. Al-Haq, that's based in
Al-Haq was one, the deal.
What's their, do you know anything about their background?
I don't know too much about their background. Al-Haq is definitely more of an organization that's working on human rights violations with the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza and this area. Badil, for example, is a refugee rights organization that's focused on refugee issues, the right to return, which is a very big one. Adala is another Palestinian organization based in Israel. So the students actually work with them as well. The students also, they've actually been divided into 2 groups. One group is the students who have only West Bank IDs, so they work with organizations based here, Al-Haq, Badil. And then the other students are the ones with Jerusalem IDs, who also provide almost like free legal services and informational sessions with Palestinians and Arabs in Jerusalem to kind of give them an idea of their rights and what guarantees and what they should know their legal rights are as Arabs living in Jerusalem.
You as a Palestinian Christian, have you found it difficult to travel about? You're saying it's now no longer possible to go very much to Jerusalem. Have you found restrictions in your own, I mean, you're a senior academic and yet it's difficult?
Well,
I am a Palestinian Christian and I am an Israeli citizen, personally.
Okay.
So, as an Israeli citizen, I shouldn't be here.
Okay. Explain. You're not allowed.
Yes, I am not allowed.
Right.
And if I am here, and if I don't know if I will, somebody will shoot me in my leg. So I don't have insurance. I don't have compensation. I don't have anything.
So you get
If my car is here and will be burned or stolen, the insurance doesn't cover it. Being here without knowing that you are losing your rights, well, it's something which really doesn't give you quietness.
Okay.
Secondly, if you are coming here, you are questioned. Where are you going? And why you are going? And to come here, now the center is considered as a program of the church, and the church gave me that I am working for it. And without that permission, I can't be here.
So the church...
Probably one day they can let me come in easily without any problem. But other 10 times, it wouldn't be easy to come here. I can give you an example. Sometimes I came with my wife. Because my family, my wife, are living in Galilee. But sometimes she is coming here. So I am giving them the permission which I have. And at the checkpoint they say, yes, okay, fine, you go. But your wife can't go with you. Well, my wife, I mean, I can't leave her here on the checkpoint. And to go back, we need 3 hours and a half driving, because my village is just near Lebanon, on the border of Lebanon. So it's really difficult. It's the problem.
So on a practical, personal level,
yeah,
these restrictions
yes,
impact on
there
your
are
life.
restrictions. And now, me with an Israeli identity card, but a Palestinian Christian who is living here in Bethlehem, he can't arrive to Jerusalem without a permission. Written permission, he should really ask permission from the military government, or I don't know where they have here an office, to ask in order to go to Jerusalem. And I know many of my friends who are scholars are not allowed to go to Jerusalem.
Which is the center of, well, one of the
Yes.
important places of their faith.
And I know many of my Jewish friends, rabbis or scholars, who wanted to be here, who wanted to come, who wanted to meet here. They can meet here and they can come because they are not allowed. And that's why some of our Jewish Christian meetings or Jewish Christian Muslim meetings we are doing in Galilee and Haifa, or nearby Nahariya and Nes Amim, or Nazareth. In the last 2 years we had there 6 or 7 meetings discussing the issues which I referred to. Reading the Bible, is our different identities influenced our reading the Bible or not? So the Jewish is reading the Bible in a different way than me, and we are discussing this. But
surely it's the way to peace,
yes,
long term.
yes.
Yeah.
If you can help us to have a normal and permission to meet, to invite some our Jewish friends here and our Palestinian friends to Jerusalem, I promise you we will be happy to have by
more
weekly meeting.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks we can meet, because I believe in such a meeting, or in such encounter, in such meetings, such discussions, because they create also friendship.
Sure.
We are really knowing each other. And through friendship you can really change something.
I think the unique contribution to Christianity that you make theologically, because in a sense we're the Christians are the sort of onlookers as within the Islamic Jewish conversation, which has become very heated, could be to bear witness to that.
I think you raise a really important point, and I think what is widely understood among many, and not just in the Christian community, but also in the Jewish and Muslim communities as well, that the Christian community is in a sense a bridge in the middle to both communities, in the sense that reconciliation and forgiveness are part of what we do, and the truth is not something we're afraid of. So, as a consequence, we may be able to continue to assist in the giving birth to a new peace here. That's understood again, all around the table. So there's a real interest, actually, the Jewish community to support the Christian community here in its fullness, as opposed to just becoming the Christian sites become museums and there are no living Christians here anymore. Clearly, it would be a tragic situation, and yet we're looking at less than 2% of the population right now here being Christian.
מובן מה שאני אומר, יותר גדול מהגוף זה השכל.
He says the body is weak, and what is more important is the wisdom.
Yeah. So the other thing we know about Druids is they absolutely taught people to be peaceful, to prefer justice, and to never use violence unless they absolutely had to.
אז אני צריך לדעת אם הוא מאותו דת.
He is asking if you are a Druid.
I'm the chief of the Peace Druids of the British Council of Druid Groups.
הבנת את זה?
לא. הוא המנהיג?
כן, הוא המנהיג, הוא ראש השבט.
יא אללה, אז הנה התגלה.
הדרואידים, של המועצה הדרואידית, הבריטית.
תגידי לו שכל עוד, זה הוא רוצה, ואני רוצה, ואת רוצה, וכולם רוצים, אבל יש גם כן רצון שהוא נמצא למעלה אצל אלוהים. וברגע שאלוהים רוצה, הוא יכין את האנשים.
הוא יכין את השטח.
והוא יכין את השטח, ואז יהיה. וברגע שיהיה רצון האל, תאמיני לי, שלא רק מבריטניה ומאמריקה, גם יכול לבוא מהודו ומפקיסטן, מאוזבקיסטן, מרוסיה, מכל העולם. יכולים לבוא 4 אנשים לשבת ולגמור את העניין.
He said, when the time will be right, and it will be God's will, God will bring the right people together, and it can be 4 people, and they will solve all the problems.
In my opinion, peace for Jerusalem, peace in Jerusalem. I don't mean Jerusalem only, but I'm talking about the Holy Land. I'm talking about the Middle East. Will pave the way for some form of reconciliation, of healing, of peace in different parts of our world. The Muslims make up 1.5 billion people. The Christians make over 2 billion people, whether they are nominal Christians or active Christians. The two make up almost 2/3 of the population of our little global village. With them, the 16, 17 million Jews, they have a lot to do. And in my opinion, the 3 faith traditions, their leaders, their political leaders, their religious leaders, will be held accountable for whatever happens to the world at large.
Fundamental to the long-term work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East is to facilitate the coming up with solutions to the crisis. In Greek philosophy, the term lysis, L-Y-S-I-S, is used for solutions. And it's the Greek equivalent to enlightenment. In the Buddhist or Hindu traditions, they talk about samadhi, moksha, nirvana. It's the point of letting go, of release, of freedom from pain and suffering. It's the goal of philosophy. So what I feel the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is trying to do is to apply some kind of philosophical solvent to the situation. Lysis has an etymological root meaning to waterize, to make liquid a problem. to dissolve. It literally means in ancient Greek word roots to dissolve a problem. And it's in the root of the word analysis, which means to dissolve again, set free, resolve. So I'm very struck by how these countries, Israel and Palestine, are very Mediterranean countries. I was very struck by the presence of water, the energy of Poseidon, the ancient Mediterranean sea deity, this ancient Bronze Age culture, the Mycenaean culture. The Palestinian peoples themselves go back to those roots. I think that there are talks about creating a Mediterranean peace zone. There's serious talks going on between the European Union, North African states, Islamic countries, to create a kind of Mediterranean-wide peace zone. I think Israel and Palestine could fit into that, and we could get a genuine peace treaty between the European Union and other Mediterranean states that we can agree on a non-violent response to conflicts. I've also proposed a European Union mediation service coming out of the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, coming back through Greece and the Balkans. I think this is part of the long-term solution, because the conflicts in Georgia and South Ossetia, which flared up at the time we were filming in Palestine and Israel, the whole region is unstable. And in Europe, we need a mechanism that kicks in, a proper mechanism to resolve conflict, institutionalized into the framework of the European Union Treaty, staffed by diplomats, trained mediators and people, so that we don't have to react in a crisis mode each time. So I think having mechanisms in place to resolve conflicts in the European Union, that can be done. It can be shared, that knowledge and expertise could be shared with neighbouring Middle Eastern countries, like in the Caucasus, like in Turkey, in Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Libya, etc. And I think longer term, the project is one of intercultural harmony. The Middle Eastern peoples have incredible wisdom going right back to Bronze Age, the source of civilization, the Neolithic, the invention of towns. These people know how to get on with each other. They are wise, loving, compassionate people. What they call their religion is important, but not. It shouldn't become a blockage to communication. So if I discover you're a Christian Syriac living in some village, that alienates me from you if I'm a Muslim or Jew or whatever. We should see these religions as enabling an interesting conversation and as being part of the solution, not part of the crisis. Each of these spiritual paths, I think, is more of initiatory lineages, if you want. Because I'm interested, as you know, in the esoteric core of religions. Within each of these faiths, there's an esoteric golden lineage come down. We need to find out who are the living saints of the region. Talk to them. They have the solution. They're not people of violence. They don't advocate it. Let their voice be heard. Let's go and find out who are the living Sufi saints, who are the great Kabbalists, who are the great Christian mystics, and the other traditions that live in the region. The solution will come from applying that wisdom, energy, to the fractured conversation that's going on at the moment. And the sword of truth, so to speak, can replace the use of the sword of violence.